IU played Kansas, and man, it was quite the start for IU. Assembly Hall was bouncing. I could tell just by watching it on TV. Those fans were excited. Those players were excited. I think I saw Mgbako just like scream in one of the Kansas players' face at one point. I was like, yes, I love to see that. And especially from him, a guy that has been a little up and down this season, but really able to kind of feed off that energy and do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I felt like IU fatigue set in. Their starters were the only ones that were giving them anything, and even one of their starters couldn't give them points. He gave them everything else that he could, but he couldn't give them points. And at the end of the day, I think Kansas they were too deep, and they had the legs, they had the energy to make it through this game. Talking about that other podcast that you were talking about, Russ, I heard them talk about how like Kansas just went in and they're like, yeah, we're the better team and we're going to beat them. I don't think so. I don't think Kansas is that much better of a team than IU. Kansas has role players in Hunter Dickinson. They do not have a star. They do not have McCullough is a good player. This Furphy guy, he's a good player. They have good players. They do not have a star player on their team. And I think Indiana exposed them in a lot of ways when all they have is really Hunter Dickinson to make things happen for him. Dakota, I'm curious on your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head that I've been a pretty vocal proponents, basically since Maui, that I don't think this Kansas team is as good as everyone seemed to think they were coming into the year. Now, granted, they definitely deserved a lot of credit going into the year, but I think the performances we've seen from them so far this season definitely hasn't lived up to the hype. Granted, they're 10-1. They've won 10 games. They've only lost the one in Maui. But at the same time, it's like they're 4 deep, realistically, and even their shooting isn't the best. I mean, they end up 6 of 18 in this one, but I'm definitely more of a pessimist when it comes to Kansas. But going into this game, I think they were also the perfect matchup to win this game versus Indiana. And I made this note when I was watching it back earlier today. How much do we think this game impacts just the difference in where Kansas is as a program right now, or where Indiana is as a program right now? Obviously, both Blue Bloods have long histories of success, but I just felt like about 10 minutes left in the second half of this game, you could feel that momentum shift. Indiana was up 10. They was going really well. And then all of a sudden, Kansas gets a stop, gets a bucket, gets a foul, and one goes to the line. And then all of a sudden, it's like you could feel the momentum just leaving. And I feel like Indiana just didn't have an answer for them. And so it was just, Indiana played a fantastic game. You get Trey Galloway's best game of his career, 28 points on 12 of 17 shooting. I don't think you could ask for literally anything more than that. Mgbako, best game of his career so far in Indiana, 14 points. And granted, he was dealing with some foul trouble there down the stretch. I think my biggest question mark is obviously not that it's his fault, Gabe Cupps. Obviously, forcing him into starting lineup, true freshman. He's being asked to do some things that maybe he wasn't expecting or really should be expected to do at this point. But I think he pass first point guard, he's going to give you what he's going to give you. I think my biggest question mark coming out of this game for Indiana is kel'el Ware. Obviously, he's feasted on against some low major competition. Yeah, he had 11 and 15, but on 3 of 12 shooting, and I didn't see anything from him in this game. In the biggest game of probably the season so far, Kansas at home, you're rocking Assembly Hall's fired up. He wasn't there for me. And they probably played their best game of the season so far, and it still just wasn't enough to win this type of game. When I think as a program, Indiana's probably expecting to win this game more times than not.
Well, yeah, especially when you have a start like that and you have a lead that they had. I forget what their lead got up to, but they 13. They had a sizable lead in this game, and it just hurts to lose that lead. I agree with you on kel'el Ware to a certain extent. I was very up and down with him on this game. I felt like there were times where he did something and I was like, yes, that's what you want out of him. And then there were also times where it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you have to get down there. You have to bang. You have to, make the plays happen in the paint. And Hunter Dickinson, he just kind of ate his lunch a few times. And I think all of us can say here, none of us here are Hunter Dickinson fans. So, so that was hard to watch. But at the end of the day, I think he battled well, and his very first true big man that's going to play him hard in the season. I just hope he can build off of it this season and be challenged a little bit more with that as he gets into Big Ten play, because he's certainly going to see a lot more of that in Big Ten play. Russ, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so I'm not going to, try to be too negative on you because Burke's been a pretty good guy to us. He said some pretty nice things, and so I'll take it easy. But if I'm an IU fan, I really got to be questioning kind of the game plan and the play calling a little bit because not just kel'el Ware, but Malik Renew was 5 of 13. So they Ware and Renew combined for 8 of 25 shooting, and it seemed like they had some kind of contract, like like you talk about some of these pro teams that if the running back's getting paid 12 million a year and the backup's getting paid 500,000 a year, well, guess what? The starter's going to get 25 carries and the backup's going to get 3 carries, even if they go for 20 yards every carry. So it's like it was like, especially in the second half, they just kept wanting to feed Renew, and he kept missing and missing and missing. And Kansas just made that run, took the lead, and went and won the game. And it's like if you have a guy like Trey Galloway that's the hot hand, and Mgbako who's having the best game of his season so far, why would you not ride those hands? Why would you not just give them the ball, right? Like that's what you saw that with the last game we talked about with Purdue. Like Braden and Fletch, they just kept giving them the ball because they were hot, right? Like if they aren't hot, you don't see them take as many shots as what they did. But for some reason, like they kept wanting to try to go at Hunter Dickinson because he's not the greatest defender. He's elite offensively, I think, but his defense is definitely suspect. So it's like they had this game plan going in to say, hey, we need to attack down low because that's where our strengths are. Well, you've got to adapt in game. When you see a guy going off like Galloway or a guy having a game like Mgbako, you've got to shift that in game. To sit there and see them. I don't know if you saw the quote against Louisville where they beat Louisville basically as they switched to a zone. And the reason they switched to a zone is because some dude in the huddle is like, hey, Mike, let's run a zone. And he's like, okay, we'll give it a shot. So they switched to a zone and they win the game. And after the game, they're like, hey, how did that, did you all practice that? That's a great switch? And he's like, no, we don't practice that at all. Like it just, we gave it a shot and it worked. It's like, so if I'm an IU fan, I'm going, hey, look, our team has obviously got the talent. Like we can compete with the big guys, right? Like, and I saw some crazy takes from IU fans. Look, just because you lost to Kansas like that doesn't mean you deserve to be a top 10 team. I don't understand that transitive property.
I love that.
They're going to that length.
That tweet sent me through so many hoops.
But I mean, yeah, they definitely have the talent to compete and to make a run and be a tournament team. But I'd be a little frustrated as an IU fan with why are we not riding the hot hand? Why are we not adapting to the game flow?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is some things to be said there. I think Malik Renew in this game changed when he started getting more and more in foul trouble. It seemed like he just was not playing as aggressive as he was at the beginning of the game. And I felt like that happened a bit with Mgbako as well. He had, 4 fouls? Mm-hmm. And Trey Galloway eventually fouled out, but I think that was late in the game.
Yeah, it was like right at the end.
Yeah, right at the end there. So, but I mean, You tell me, because I never want to be the guy who blames the refs, Dakota. But you tell me, should IU fans at least be a little bit upset with the reffing of this game? Because it definitely did not seem like it was doing IU any favors to me.
Listen, Purdue fans more than any love to chat about reffing and how in college basketball games. And I will say that I think a lot of people, there was some conversation before the game even started. There's a Purdue fan who actually does officiating and knows a lot of it. He was even commenting saying that this doesn't feel like the right crew that's going to be able to manage this game correctly. And I think we saw it a lot down the stretch. There were definitely some iffy calls, specifically there towards the end, especially after a review that out of bounds call that ended up giving it to Kansas before expertly trolling the Indiana crowd by giving the ball to Indiana and then reversing it back to Kansas. But I mean, unfortunately, this is just going to happen sometimes. You're just going to get a crew that's not necessarily up to the challenge of this level of game. And while I'm also a proponent of you can't blame everything on the refs. Indiana definitely didn't make the right adjustments and plays down the stretch to win the game, but you can't say the officiating helped at all either. So,
and I know you guys hate the numbers argument, but just entertain me for a second, okay? McCullough Jr., okay, scored 21 points. Right. And we just went off about how kel'el Ware was 3 of 12. The dude was 3 of 11. He shot 16 free throws. Was he fouled? He was not fouled that much. I'm sorry. He was not fouled that much. He was not, just absolutely Zach Edey down there where he's got cuts and bruises. I know you guys will like that one, so I shouted that one out for you. He's not got cuts and bruises like Zach Edey down there or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Some of the fouls are warranted because, they were fouling him down there. But at the end of the day, the guy gets 3 for 11, 21 points. Russ, was it fair in your eyes? What do you think about the reffing?
Yeah, so kind of like Dakota, I definitely don't want to say, hey, the refs are the reason this happened or the reason that we lost the game or won the game. But I also am a fan of or I'm an anti-fan of the don't let the refs decide the game then, like put the game out of the refs' hands. Well, that's not possible. And is it really fair to say if these two teams are even that one call should decide the game? Because the team that wins the game because of that call, you could also say, hey, you shouldn't put the game in the hand of the refs, and they had to get that call. Like, you have pivotal calls at the end of the game that if it's a one possession game and it's a possession call, like that is huge. That is huge because you got the team that might be up with less than 30 seconds left and have the lead. If you give them the ball, now it's an automatic foul situation. They can make it a 2-possession game. Whereas if the team behind has it and they're down 1, down 2, and they get the possession, they can go win the game. Like that's a game-changing call. So yeah, it's frustrating and there's nothing you can do about it. Like if the call is made that way, but I definitely understand the frustration to say, hey, look, they didn't make the right call and that could have cost us the game. Like you're right. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it. So, but I would say too, with McCullers free throws, that was the guy it seemed like they were sending to the line like the last 3 or 4 or 5 times at the end of the game. So I feel like half those free throws were like the trying to extend the game free throws. So I will say that much, but
right. I mean, they definitely weren't all, driving the lane and stuff like that, but still like, I just didn't feel like he was getting fouled that much going down low. Yeah, I had a problem with it. So, you got a fan in here, Dylan Russ. So handsome. Thanks, Dylan. All right, guys. Any more thoughts on that one? I think we covered that one pretty well.
No, that's a tough one for Indiana, honestly.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out. Get in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.